Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host John, and today here on the channel we're going to be talking about X, Pearl, and Maxine, the X trilogy, all of which were directed by Ty West. We're going to be talking about those films and their brand new A24 4K Blu-rays that just came out. But before we get into all of those 4K Blu-ray reviews, I always like to give a quick film review, and today it's going to be 3 films. We're going to be talking about the entire X trilogy, full of spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything about those films and you're just here for the 4K Blu-ray review, you guys can skip ahead right now. So back in March of 2022, Ty West, who's been working for a long time, delivered to us X in theaters, and I didn't see this in theaters. In fact, I didn't catch up to this until Pearl was coming out in September. I wanted to check out X. I had heard great things about it. So X, it's a love letter to those 1970s, mostly 1970s horror films. Think of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but clearly Ty West is also a lover of just 1970s films in general. The font that he uses and the way he writes 1979 on the screen with the red, white, and blue lettering is right out of the movie Nashville, directed by Robert Altman. And throughout the entire trilogy, Ty West, who wrote all of these movies, he did co-wrote the second one, Pearl, with Maya Goth, which is very much a character study of the character Pearl that we see here in Maxine as an older lady, also played by Maya Goth, who plays 2 characters in all 3 of these movies. In the first film, she plays both Maxine and Pearl. In the second film, she plays young Pearl. In the third film, Maxine, you guessed it, she plays Maxine. But clearly, Ty West, a lover of film. Throughout all 3 of these movies, you can clearly see his love for horror, but like I said, just a lover of 70s film in general, probably just a lover of film in general. But all 3 of these movies are love letters to certain types of horror films and films in general. But X is just clearly a love letter to mostly the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and those slasher films of the 1980s. And that's what I heard when I first heard about the movie itself, was that this is a love letter to slashers. If you love slashers, a lot like that Thanksgiving that came out, I believe, in 2023, of love letter to those slashers that we just don't get anymore. Also featured Jenna Ortega right on her rise. So I think that's kind of what got asses in the seats more than anything. Not that it was Maya Goth or Ty West involved. No, it was probably Jenna Ortega. And she does a good enough job in that movie. But you know, it's also a really funny movie. It's got a lot of graphic violence, clearly, again, using real practical effects. That's one thing that the entire trilogy is concentrating on, is just beautiful filmmaking, which is another thing that kind of drew me to the franchise in general. And X is just a very good slasher movie. I don't think it's the best in the entire trilogy, but it sets up so much that when you go back to it after watching Pearl and Maxine, X is a much better movie. The entire trilogy works by watching it as a trilogy. It's very rare we get that anymore, and it's very rare where a trilogy is consistently good throughout. Now, some people kind of fell off on Maxine, but I'll talk about that in a second. But for the most part, to have high quality films for all 3 films, that's really special, especially in the world of film, and we got that here with all 3 movies. Because after X finishes up, and apparently Ty West decided, you know, COVID's going on, I'm just going to start making another movie. Him and Mia Goth had started writing this movie halfway through making X, and they used all the same sets. They just shined them up real nice to make the whole movie look like it's a fairy tale. A lot of it's based on The Wizard of Oz, and that's because, you know, we got these like beautiful looking painting-esque backgrounds, and like we're having all this violence happen in front of it. You know, we see the run-down barn and everything, the run-down state of the house in X, but now in Pearl, we're going to see when it's all brand new. But that doesn't mean that Pearl's a nicer character. No, it's very much a character study of Pearl. I said back in 2022 that this is only my second favorite film of the year behind Babylon. Actually, if you look at my list, I think I put Pearl at number 1. A lot of that was just because of the incredible performances. I mean, they let people just monologue like crazy in this movie. Now, the monologue that Mia Goth does, basically explaining her entire feelings, everything she has on the inside, all the anger towards her husband, who, you know, this guy had a terrible life. We find out in like X and everything that he fought not just in World War I, but in World War II, and he's got to come home to Pearl, and Pearl's a psycho, but he really still loves her. I mean, at the end of Pearl, it's like, you come home to this. Pearl's parents, they're sitting there dead. You know, they got food around them. It's got covered in maggots. And he just got back from war, and he's like, yeah, I guess I can deal with this. This is fine. And he does. He does. But the thing I love about Pearl, besides all of the fantastic acting, because the acting is at the forefront, is just the incredible production design. True love letter, again, to filmmaking, films of the past. But to create a horror film in this vision, it's so unique, it's so original, and to me, Pearl is still the best film in the entire trilogy. Now, because X and Pearl did so well financially, you know, they didn't really cost too much to make, Pearl was actually made during the COVID, during the shutdown. That was the whole thing, is they were able to use Avatar: The Way of the Water crew because they were on a break, I guess, over there in New Zealand. So he was able to use them because they had already self-isolated because of COVID. So they were free, they were clear. They used them to help make this movie. And you can clearly see also in Pearl the references to COVID about like wearing masks, how you can't recognize people anymore, or like you could see that people are standing about 6 feet apart while they're waiting for their auditions. That was taking place during 1918 during the Spanish flu, so another pandemic. So that kind of worked out. They're making a movie during the pandemic of the COVID pandemic, and they're talking about the pandemic of 1918. So you can see those little references in the film as well. Again, it's the production design. That whole movie is just pure eye candy. And then when you get to Maxine, released July 5th, 2024, maybe the ship had just sailed. This should have been my favorite in the entire trilogy because it takes place in the 1980s. I'm a huge fan of 1980s cinema, and this is a love letter to a lot of 1980s, you know, I wouldn't say mainstream horror films, but if you're a big fan of like Brian De Palma films from that era, think of movies like Body Double. I would say Body Double was the biggest inspiration on Maxine. So watch Body Double, then watch Maxine. I think you'll feel a little bit better about it because I remember people being very disappointed by the outcome, which they set up the outcome of Maxine in X. You actually see Maxine's father on the TV screen in X, so it shouldn't have been a shock that he was behind everything that was happening. I think people were maybe expecting there to be a bigger tie-in with the Night Stalker killer, or like, you know, with the demonic worship that we saw on the TV in the time in the 1980s, you know, with Twisted Sister and everything like that. Like, we thought it was going to be more of that, but instead it turns out that Maxine's father is just a real religious fuck who leads a cult. That's all it really turned out to be. But I still love the shootout at the end at that house. I thought that was awesome. I love that the cops in Los Angeles in this movie, you know, they're basically actors too. They're putting on a show to get things done. I love all that. Again, throughout the entire trilogy, it's still very funny. No matter which movie you want, you're still going to get some good laughs out of it because each movie is so well written. Ty West wrote all these movies except, again, for Pearl with Mia Goth. They're all great. They're all done so well. I can understand that it's feeling a little bit deflating once you get to the third movie because X and Pearl, they do feel very special. Again, using the same sets, they feel very connected. This is, you know, a few years later. It's 1985. I just think maybe the ship had sailed for a lot of people, but again, still great production design. We even get to see the Psycho house in this movie. We go inside the Psycho house in this movie. We get some over-the-top, ridiculous performances from guys like Kevin Bacon and Giancarlo Esposito, all of them willing to do their parts and not holding back. I appreciate all that because you got to rise up to what Mia Goth is doing in this movie, and she's doing an incredible job. And even the audition scene at the very beginning is a great juxtaposition with the audition scene from Pearl, because when Pearl doesn't get the part and she fucking loses it, you feel for her. You actually feel sad for her, even though she's not in a very good state of mind. She lives in a delusional state. You still feel bad for her, but then of course, you know, you don't feel bad for her that much more after she kills everybody. But again, when you watch all these movies back to back to back, they all tie into each other. They all make a lot of sense as a group, and it's one of those trilogies I feel like work better when you watch them back to back to back, like the Lord of the Rings trilogy or the Back to the Future trilogy. A little bit different than like the Indiana Jones trilogy, but you know, you get little callbacks through all those movies. But these, they all tie into each other, and I absolutely love the entire trilogy for it. So I can always recommend these movies no matter which way you choose to watch them, but today we're also here to talk about the brand new A24 4K Blu-rays that just came out. And here they are, X, Pearl, and Maxine on 4K Blu-ray. It cost a pretty penny, and honestly, I didn't expect it to be this big. I thought it was going to be just a regular like digibook kind of thing, or like, you know, a version of a digibook, but no, it's this huge packaging that I have nowhere to put this right now. I'm going to be honest with you guys, this will not fit on my shelving, so I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this. Gonna have to figure something out, maybe make like a floating shelf. That's what my buddy Tim said to do, because I do love it. It's just that it's way too big and it's a little bit impractical, which is something that A24 has done numerous times, looking like Midsommar and The Lighthouse. Like, I have The Lighthouse and it's just sitting up there in a weird spot because it just doesn't fit with anything else. And I appreciate taking like big leaps in packaging. It's a little bit impractical, if I'm being honest. I do appreciate the slip sleeve on it, that if you were to, you know, slide that off like that, you take it off and you still got the same nice artwork underneath. You come in, that slip sleeve's nice, it's got writing on it. Obviously now you can't see when I take it off. When you come inside, some just absolutely incredible reading material. I mean, really good paper stock as well. They cheaped out nowhere when it comes to the packaging. This looks just absolutely stunning. Just really truly love that. Again, the outside packaging too, it's a hard box, just beautiful. And then when you come inside, Here's where all the movies are stored. And again, this is premium as well. A nice little matte finish on it. You come inside, you're going to see X, Pearl, and Maxine, all of them on 4K Blu-ray. No Blu-rays packed in here. That might disappoint some people. I'm pretty sure you can buy this on Blu-ray anyway with the same exact scans. Now, this isn't the first time that X, Pearl, and Maxine have been released on 4K Blu-ray. And if you guys have been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know that I was holding out for an A24 trilogy release. Maxine, I'm pretty sure, got a 4K Blu-ray release when it first came out on physical media, so that makes sense. And I believe all those extras are the same extras that do carry over this 4K Blu-ray. But in comparison with X and Pearl, I'm not too sure about those 4K Blu-ray releases, the previous ones from other regions, if it's the exact same scan that's packed in here. If I had to guess, yes, because those scans also had Dolby Atmos tracks, and all three of these movies have Dolby Atmos tracks with them. Phenomenal Dolby Atmos tracks, I might add. But as far as the extras go, your extras are going to be on each disc individually. If the extras tie the X or Pearl or Maxine, you know, you'll have all those featurettes, trailers, and commentary tracks, which they nicely separate as well. Maxine has probably the most amount of featurettes and extras just because I think it's the most recent film and they were filming more featurettes at the time. But still, all the extras, all the making ofs are great. That's one thing that A24 does a great job at, is they're just making these great little making of documentaries. They're not very long. Not all of them are very long. They're kind of in varying degrees of length, but still, I appreciate it. You can find out everything you really need to know about the movies. Sometimes A24 does take the lazy route, but I would say that this is definitely more on the better end as far as extras go and as far as featurettes go. I think most people will be pretty happy about that, but most people are picking these up because they thought these were beautiful looking films. Each film has a unique look to them. So if you watch X, you know, that kind of has that dirty 1970s look to it, the way it's shot. You know, even when you watch it on 4K Blu-ray, it kind of translates very well. No 4K Blu-ray that's packed in here looks the same. All of them look very unique to their own type of film. Like Pearl's gonna look the best in here, but of course it's gonna look the best. They all have HDR10 and Dolby Vision. They all have Dolby Atmos tracks. So they're all using the exact same technology. It's just how the films themselves were made and what Ty West was going for with the look of these films. So Pearl, because they were trying to make this look like these beautiful fantasy films of the past, and, you know, the Wizard of Oz kind of look to them, and, you know, we have these beautiful picturesque backgrounds, but all this beautiful murder is happening in front of him with that deep reds and whites. So all of that just translates so much better to the 4K Blu-ray format than like something X or Maxine, which is trying to have like this very faded look to it. You know, suck the color out of it, suck the saturation out of it, really turn that stuff down, especially in Maxine. That makes sense as well. But if you were to compare them, people will probably say, oh, Pearl's the best looking, but they were going for a certain look for each of these films, and the 4K Blu-ray format handles it perfectly for every single one of these films, no matter if you watch it in HDR10 or in Dolby Vision. The visuals are just absolutely stunning. You know, any issues, like, people might complain about the coloring, but that's just because it's designed that way. That's how Maxine's supposed to look, and it just, as long as it translates over to the 4K Blu-ray format, well, we can't complain. Now, how about those Dolby Atmos tracks? All three of them are very good. Again, if I had to pick a favorite, I'm going to still go with Pearl. That seems to have the best Dolby Atmos track in there, mixed very well. There's also a great scene with thunder and lightning. All that stuff is going to come through phenomenally. All three of these movies also have scores that fit their films uniquely. And we just want all that to come in crisp and clear. We want to make sure we have heavy bass. There was great bass on here. That's something I've noticed a lot lately, is some of these Dolby Atmos tracks, especially since people have been pointing it out to me, don't really have enough bass packed in. And luckily, all three of these movies do have a good punch to them. They're all very well mixed. Just very good to great Dolby Atmos tracks. I still think Pearl might be the best. Overall, I'm going to say Pearl's the best 4K Blu-ray in here. It's also the best film in my opinion, but that's not to knock X and Maxine. I think they nailed exactly what they were going for. And again, like I said in my film review, these are the perfect kinds of movies to watch in a trilogy. You're just going to be very fortunate if you pick up these 4K Blu-rays. Now, I can't say that it's a recommendation for everybody. It's really going to come down to how do you feel about these movies. If you're not a huge fan of these movies and you already have them on Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray, you probably don't need to pick these up. Yes, you're going to get the extra bells and whistles, and yes, you're going to get that brand new packaging, which is really cool, but like I said, it's a little bit impractical. So if you already have these movies, unless you're a huge fan and you already have them on 4K Blu-ray or you just on Blu-ray, I think you probably are better off taking a pass on it, because I don't think you're going to really get enough to justify that high price tag. But if you're somebody who was waiting like me, if you go back through all the videos I've done here on the channel, I've been saying since Pearl came out, because Maxine was announced at the very end of Pearl, I'm going to wait for an A24 release on 4K Blu-ray, so I waited. put my money where my mouth is. I grabbed these on 4K Blu-ray. I am very happy with my purchase. The only disappointment is like the size of the packaging. I just have nowhere to put it, but I will be happy once I find a nice place for it. At least it's a very good looking showpiece, something I'm very happy to have in my collection. And if I was going to give a score of 1 to 10 on the entire X trilogy on 4K Blu-ray from A24, I'm going to give these a 9.5 out of 10. These are almost perfect releases. I think if they just, maybe gave us a smaller version of the packaging, I would be even happier, but I'm obviously not going to double dip or anything. I already have them. But I think some people who are really lacking for space or don't really know where to put this, they're going to have a hard time with it, because this is something you really want to show off because it's absolutely beautiful. And also, it's a trilogy of movies that, yeah, they got some love at the time, but after Maxine kind of left people feeling a little bit down, you don't hear about them as much, and that's really a shame because they're all quality films, and if you're a horror fan, you definitely owe it to yourself to check these out. But anyway, that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you guys enjoyed these reviews, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video if you could, and we have channel memberships, guys. So if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel, like John Doe Juggalo, Ben Rondo, and Harvey Scott, you can do that. Or you can even become a channel director, like Nicholas Head, Frank from Frank's Media Reviews, Kevin Kruger, Uncle V, and Stone. Yes, man! Or you can even bump it up to the channel bankroll members, like Mr. Smelly Potato. But of course, guys, if you have no money to throw my way, I don't mind at all. I just hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.